الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين ونصلي ونسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. نعم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن المتقين في مقام أمين في جنات وعيون يلبسون من سندس وإستبرق متقابلين كذلك وزوجناهم بحور عين يدعون فيها بكل فاكهة آمنين لا يذوقون فيها الموت إلا الموتة الأولى ووقاهم عذاب الجحيم فضلا من ربك ذلك هو الفوز العظيم. فإنما يسرناه بلسانك لعلهم يتذكرون فارتقب إنهم مرتقبون.
نعم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. نعم. read the hadith as well.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر لنا ولمشايخنا ولجميع المسلمين والحاضرين. أما بعد فبأسانيدكم شيخنا حفظكم الله تعالى إلى الناسخ وبه قال
الإمام محمد. الإمام محمد. next page.
إلى الإمام محمد بن الحسن الشيباني رحمه الله تعالى قال أخبرنا مالك بن أنس قال أخبرني ابن شهاب الزهري عن عروة أنه قال حدثتني عائشة رضي الله عنها قال أخبرنا مالك بن أنس عن يزيد بن زياد مولى لبني هاشم عن عبد الله بن رافع مولى أم سلمة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أنه سأله عن وقت الصلاة فقال أبو هريرة أنا أخبرك صل الظهر إذا كان ظلك مثلك والعصر إذا كان ظلك مثليك والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس والعشاء ما بينك وبين ثلث الليل فإن نمت إلى نصف الليل فلا نامت عينك وصل الصبح بغلس. قال محمد وهذا قول أبي حنيفة في وقت العصر وكان يرى الإسفار بالفجر. وأما في قولنا فإنا نقول إذا زاد الظل على المثل فصار مثل الشيء وزيادة من حين زالت الشمس فقد دخل وقت العصر. وأما أبو حنيفة فقال لا يدخل وقت العصر حتى يصير الظل مثليه.
نعم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So continuing on from what we were mentioning yesterday, we're going through, number one, the different timings of the salawat according to the different a'imma as a tamheed, yani something that we keep in mind before we discuss the exact hadith that we will mention in this chapter. And we mentioned the timing of Salatul Dhuhr, when it starts. We mentioned there's ijma' that the timing of Salatul Dhuhr starts from Zawal. And we mentioned that there was khilaf amongst the ulama regarding the ending timing of Dhuhr. And in that we mentioned the opinion, a few opinions. With regards to the opinion of Al-Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, or the Hanafi madhab specifically, according to the Hanafi madhab, the Zahir riwayah from Al-Imam Abu Hanifa is that the timing of Dhuhr ends at Mithlain. And there are a number of riwayat that have been transmitted from Imam Abu Hanifa in this regard. And now this is, just to make sense of this, this is something very common in the madahib, within the madahib, not only the Hanafi madhab, all of the madahib. When it comes to the opinions held by the a'imma, the main scholars of these madahib, sometimes the scholars themselves, initially they will hold an opinion, and then as time went on, they would change their opinion. So it's possible in one mas'ala, in one discussion, you can have a number of opinions transmitted from the imam. Whether it's Imam Shafi'i, in regards to Imam Shafi'i, we know that there were actually two entire madhabs, which is known as al-madhab al-qadim and al-madhab al-jadid. initially when he compiled his madhab, initially in Iraq, when he was in Iraq. That is known as al-madhab al-qadim. And later on, towards the end of his life, the last 4 years of his life, he spent in Egypt. And over there, he recompiled the entire madhab, which is known as al-madhab al-jadid. And he used to say that anyone who narrates from me regarding al-madhab al-qadim, or what I said previously, I don't permit it. Only narrate from me the opinion that I've held in al-madhab al-jadid. So this occurred with Imam Shafi'i. It also occurred with Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. There are many riwayat that you will find, for example, for the Hanbali students that study the Hanbali madhab, Hanbali school of thought. Sometimes you'll have a number of opinions that are all going back to the same Imam who is Imam Ahmad. Likewise, Imam Malik ibn Anas. Sometimes the students differ regarding what Imam Malik, his opinion was. And that's why in the Malikiyya as well, you have different strands over time. And likewise in the Hanafi school of thought. So every single school of thought, you have sometimes in certain masail, there are a number of opinions that are transmitted from that Imam. Now the responsibility is upon the scholars that follow that school of thought to pinpoint exactly what is the most precise opinion of that Imam. What is the most precise opinion held by that Imam. And in the Hanafi madhab, we mentioned that the default is that the final stamp is given to those opinions that are mentioned in Zahir al-Riwayah. If you remember, in the biography of Imam Muhammad rahimahullah ta'ala, we mentioned Imam Muhammad compiled 6 books. He compiled more than 6 books, not just 6, but the 6 famous books that are known as Zahir al-Riwayah. They are famous because in these books, the main purpose of compiling those books was simply to compile the opinions of the Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Abu Yusuf and himself. It was actually to preserve the fiqhi opinions of the Imam from the Hanafi school of thought. Whereas there were other students of Imam Abu Hanifa as well that sometimes might transmit an opinion of Abu Hanifa in other works, in their own works, for example, or they transmit it to their students. So the rule is in the Hanafi school of thought, we give preference to the opinion that is mentioned in Zahir al-Riwayah over any other opinion. And the other books and the other works that will all transmit and narrate opinions from Abu Hanifa, they're known as Nawadir. So the rest of the books of Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, other than these 6, if he were to quote an opinion of Abu Hanifa in those books, we call them Nawadir. And likewise, if you find an opinion of Abu Hanifa quoted in the books of Abu Yusuf, rahimahullah ta'ala, who also has some books, we also call that Nawadir. And likewise, other students of Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala. So in comparison to Zahir al-Riwayah, which are the books of Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, the rest of the works that go back to the students of Imam Abu Hanifa, in which you can find quotations of Imam Abu Hanifa's opinion, we call them Nawadir. And the rule is, in the Hanafi school of thought, if there's a difference regarding the opinion of Abu Hanifa, one is mentioned in Zahir al-Riwayah and the other one is mentioned in Nawadir, we give preference to the one which was mentioned in Zahir al-Riwayah. Because Zahir al-Riwayah, Imam Muhammad compiled these books specifically to safeguard the teachings of the madhab. To safeguard the teachings of the madhab. That is a general rule. And then there is more detail, of course, that is found afterwards. So in this mas'ala, regarding the ending time of dhuhr, the timing of dhuhr, there are actually 4 riwayat that are transmitted from Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala, in this regard. 4 riwayat, 4 opinions that are all transmitted from Abu Hanifa. And this is not something, as I mentioned, this is not something uncommon. This is found literally in every single school of thought. Sometimes in one mas'ala you'll find from Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal a number of opinions, and it's the same mas'ala. So this is something very, very common, and it's up to the later scholars in that school of thought that will come and do tanqih. This is called tanqih, especially the scholars that came the immediate century after Imam, the main A'imma, the immediate 2 centuries after the main A'imma. So the scholars of the 3rd century and the 4th century from the Hanafi school of thought, they were very particular in this regard, which is to specify exactly what opinion it was that Abu Hanifa passed away upon, rahimahullah ta'ala. And what is the main adopted opinion in the madhab. So with regards to Imam Abu Hanifa, there are 4 riwayat when it comes to the timing of dhuhr. Number 1 is al-mithl al-awwal, the same as the opinion of the jumhur. The majority of scholars, as we mentioned yesterday, they hold the opinion, the Shafi'iyya and the Malikiyya and the Hanabila, they hold the opinion that after the shadow reaches the length of the height of the individual, which is we call mithl, and they also call it al-qamatul ula, yani the first initial height of that individual, as long as the shadow reaches that length, that is considered the ending time of dhuhr and the beginning time of Salatul Asr. And if you wanted to test this out, one simple way to do it, as I mentioned in the books, is that you take a piece of wood, a stick, and for example, put it into the earth and let it stay there in the middle of the desert, for example, in an open area. And as the sun is rising, the sun will eventually reach the center of the sky, as we mentioned yesterday. At that time, there will be a very small shadow beside that stick. Possibly, it could be so small that it's almost non-visible, and sometimes it can get longer depending on where that land is exactly. So when you see that shadow, when the sun is literally in the center of the sky, place a line over there. Okay, the shadow of the stick, and then the sun will start its descent towards the west, and also measure the length of the stick, the height of the stick. When the shadow from that line that you placed reaches that length, which is the height of the stick, that is mithl awwal. And that is the time where, according to the majority of scholars, the timing of dhuhr finishes and the timing of asr starts. The timing of asr starts. And that initial shadow which was right beside the stick, we call that fay'uz zawal. The shadow which is the initial shadow at the timing of zawal. Again, this shadow can actually differ in length depending on where it is in the world, or where the land is situated. So according to Imam Abu Hanifa, one riwayah is that he is with everyone else, which is that dhuhr time ends after al-mithl al-awwal and asr time starts right at the beginning of al-mithl al-thani, right after al-mithl al-awwal finishes. This is the riwayah of al-Hasan from Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. This is the riwayah of al-Hasan from Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. And in fact, As-Sarakhsi rahimahullah ta'ala in al-Mabsut, and likewise al-Kasani in al-Badai', they mention that this is also transmitted from Imam Muhammad from Abu Hanifa. So Imam Muhammad also transmits this riwayah from Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. إذا صار ظل كل شيء مثله سوى فيء الظلال سوى فيء الزوال. Then in that situation, the timing of dhuhr will finish and asr will start. This is one riwayah, the first riwayah. The second riwayah from Abu Hanifa, which is the most mashhur riwayah, is mithlain, which is that it's necessary for it to reach, the shadow has to reach double the length of the individual. So that same stick that we're using, for example, that you place in the earth or the soil, it has to reach double its length. Now, of course, this is later. So dhuhr timing is delayed far later compared to the first timing. Al-mithl al-awwal would be, for example, earlier, and al-mithl al-thani would be far later because the shadow would have to reach double the length of the actual height of the stick, for example. This is the second opinion of Abu Hanifa, that dhuhr timing continues all the way till al-mithl al-thani, and then asr starts until ghurub al-shams. And they mention that this opinion is from Zahirul Riwayah. They mention that this opinion of Abu Hanifa is from Zahirul Riwayah. However, Al-Imam Al-Kashmiri in Faydh al-Bari, he says that the mashhur opinion is that this is from Zahirul Riwayah. He says, وَأَمَّا الْإِمَامُ الْهُمَامِ فظاهر الرواية عنه في المشهور أن وقت الظهر لا يخرج إلى أن يصير الظل مثليه ثم يدخل وقت العصر. Then he says, وليت شعري من أين جعلوها ظاهر الرواية. He says, I don't know where they got this from. How is this in Zahir Riwayah? This is really interesting. The majority of the books mention that Zahir Riwayah from Abu Hanifa is mithlain. And Kashmiri rahimahullah is saying, I don't know where they got this from when it comes to Zahir Riwayah. Imam Muhammad did not mention this explicitly. What's the actual reason for this? The reason is that Imam Muhammad rahimahullah ta'ala in Zahir Riwayah, in Al-Asl, for example, the actual wording that he uses is, he says regarding the timing of dhuhr, he says من حين تزول الشمس إلى أن يكون الظل قامة في قول أبي يوسف ومحمد. As soon as zawal starts until the dhil, which is a shadow, reaches one mithl. قامة meaning reaches one mithl, the length of the height of the actual object that is being measured. In the opinion of Abu Yusuf and Muhammad, this is what is mentioned in Asl. Asl is the famous book in Zahir Riwayah. And then he says, وقال أبو حنيفة لا يدخل وقت العصر حتى يصير الظل قامتين فإذا صار الظل قامتين دخل وقت العصر. Abu Hanifa says, now he's quoting Abu Hanifa, that the timing of Asr doesn't start until the shadow reaches double the length. When it becomes double, then the timing of Asr starts. So interestingly, when he transmitted the qawl of Abu Hanifa, he didn't mention the timing that Abu Hanifa considers, which is the ending time of dhuhr. For themselves, for Abu Yusuf and Muhammad, what was mentioning is the ending timing of dhuhr, which is that it reaches one length, one shadow's length, or the length of the actual object. The shadow reaches the length of one shadow of that object, or the length of the object itself. But when he mentioned Abu Hanifa's qawl, he didn't mention, according to Abu Hanifa, dhuhr timing ends at mithlain. He said, according to Abu Hanifa, Asr starts at mithlain. Or the Asr timing doesn't start until mithlain. And then he says, regarding عصر أرأيت وقت العصر متى هو قال من حين يكون الظل قامة فيزيد على القامة إلى أن تتغير الشمس في قول أبي يوسف ومحمد وقال أبو حنيفة لا يدخل وقت العصر حتى يصير الظل قامتين وآخر وقتها غروب الشمس. So this is the wording which is mentioned in Asl of Al-Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. And when we look at the wording, what do we find? That he mentions the ending timing of Dhuhr according to Imam Abu Yusuf and Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. But according to Abu Hanifa, he doesn't mention the ending timing of Dhuhr. He just goes straight to the beginning timing of Asr. So is it possible that Abu Hanifa also agrees that the ending timing of Dhuhr is at Mithl Awwal and the beginning time of Asr is at Mithl Thani, and in between there's a time where there's nothing? This is the third riwayah from Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. Third riwayah from Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala is that there is a timing in between which is known as waqt muhmal. So Dhuhr finishes at Mithl Awwal and Asr starts at Mithl Thani, and between the two is a time where there's no salah. Between the two there is a time where there's no salah. This is the third riwayah from Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, and this is the riwayah of Asad ibn Amr and Abi Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. There's a fourth riwayah from Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, which is that the timing of Dhuhr remains until shortly before Mithl Thani, around 10 minutes, and then the timing of Asr starts at Mithl Thani. So in this as well there is a waqt muhmal, but is far shorter between the two, between Dhuhr and Asr. نعم. الكشميري says وصحح الكرخي أن وقت الظهر إلى أقل من قامتين ولا يدخل وقت العصر حتى يصير قامتين. So these are the four opinions that are transmitted from Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. And based on this, Al-Kashmiri says, where do they get the idea that according to Abu Hanifa, Dhuhr timing ends at Mithlain? This is not explicitly mentioned in Zahir Riwayah. And even before that, Imam Kasani, for example, in Badai and other scholars from the Hanafi jurists, they mention explicitly in their books that, yes, Imam Abu Hanifa in Zahir Riwayah, it wasn't mentioned the timing where he considered Dhuhr timing to finish. And all that was mentioned was the beginning timing of Asr. Then why is it the case that the majority of the ulama from the Hanafiya say that according to Imam Abu Hanifa, the timing of Dhuhr ends at Mithlain, right before the timing of Asr starts? The reason is because, as Al-Jassas mentions in his work, that the default is that there's no timing between Dhuhr and Asr where there's nothing. Dhuhr continues all the way till Asr time starts. And that is proven in the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we mentioned yesterday. Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that the Messenger says that the timing of Dhuhr remains until Asr starts. So based on this, if Abu Hanifa is saying that Asr time starts at Mithlain, then the timing of Dhuhr should remain until Asr time starts. Even according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. طيب, there's another very interesting, in the other works of Imam Muhammad Hassan al-Shaybani, in Al-Hujjah ala Ahl al-Madinah, the way he words this mas'ala is that he says, قال أبو حنيفة رضي الله عنه تأخير صلاة العصر أفضل من تعجيلها إذا صليت والشمس بيضاء نقية لم تتغير وعلى ذلك كان أصحاب عبد الله بن مسعود بالكوفة. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, then he transmits from Ibrahim al-Nakha'i that he says أدركت أصحاب عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه وهم يصلون العصر في آخر وقتها وقال أهل المدينة ومالك التعجيل بها أفضل من التأخير. This is also very interesting wording, where Imam, when he's quoting the opinion of Abu Hanifa, he simply says, according to Abu Hanifa, it's better to delay Asr, and that is how the companions of, or the students, disciples, and their disciples of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud were. The immediate disciples of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and their disciples. In Kufa, that is how they would pray Salatul Asr, which is that they would delay it. They would delay it. And as for Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, and the scholars of Medina, they would bring Asr forward. They would pray Asr in the beginning. So these are the four opinions that are transmitted from Al-Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. طيب, from these four riwayat, which is the riwayah which is mu'tamada in the madhab? In the madhab they say that the riwayah which is mashhur is that according to Abu Hanifa, Dhuhr does not end until Mithlain and Asr starts at Mithlain. So 2 lengths of the height of the object that you're measuring, that when the shadow reaches 2 lengths of that, the height of that object, then at that time Dhuhr timing ends and Asr time begins. And the reason why, even if, let's say for example, in Zahir Riwayah this isn't mentioned explicitly that Dhuhr finishes until then, it is mentioned that Asr starts at Mithlain. So we know for sure that Asr starts at Mithlain. Now the question is there a waqt which is muhmal between the two? Is there a timing which is void or nullified, or timing where there's no salah which is performed between the two. Then they say that the default is that there shouldn't be. And that is what the majority of the ulama are upon. That there's no fasila, there's no timing between dhuhr and asr where there's nothing. And even in the Shafi'i madhab, we mentioned that it was narrated in their madhab, but it was a weaker opinion. The stronger opinion, even in the Shafi'i madhab, is that there's no timing in between. And likewise in the Maliki madhab, in fact, they believe there's a waqt mushtarak. According to one opinion, the other opinion is that as soon as dhuhr ends, asr begins. So, the majority of the ulama, they don't believe in a timing between the two salahs which is empty. And based on this, we say that most likely Abu Hanifa was also upon this. And it's unlikely that Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala felt or believed that there was a timing in between dhuhr and asr which was empty. And if that was the case, because this is something which is different, then they would have explicitly mentioned it. They would have explicitly mentioned it. And if dhuhr timing, according to Imam Abu Hanifa, this is also very interesting in the wording of al-asl. Again, when he mentions the ending timing of dhuhr, how does he word it? He says, من حين تزول الشمس إلى أن يكون الظل قامة في قول أبو يوسف ومحمد. He doesn't mention Abu Hanifa over there. If Abu Hanifa also agreed with them that dhuhr timing ended at the first mithal, then Abu Hanifa's name would have also been mentioned over here. And then he would have said after that, ولا يدخل وقت العصر عند أبي حنيفة حتى يصير الظل قامتين. He would have said that. But he didn't mention Abu Hanifa in the initial statement at all. So he didn't say وقت الظهر من حين تزول الشمس إلى أن يكون الظل قامة في قول أبي يوسف ومحمد وأبي حنيفة. He just said في قول أبي يوسف ومحمد. What does that show you? Abu Hanifa was not holding this opinion. So what would make sense, the zahir of the kalam which is found even in Zahir Riwayah in Asl, is that Abu Hanifa believes that it continues until mithlain, the dhuhr time continues until mithlain, and at mithlain asr timing starts, and this is what is the mu'tamad and madhab, and this is what is the understanding of the majority of the scholars of the Hanafi school of thought regarding the timing that Imam Abu Hanifa was upon. Also over here, there's a slight difference between two words, which is dhil and fay. Dhil and fay. Loosely, they're both translated as shadow. However, they are not both words that are used for shadow. The Arabs, they actually differentiate between these two. Dhil is the shadow throughout the day. So in the morning, the shadow is also called dhil, and in the evening, the shadow is also called dhil. Okay, and dhil literally in Arabic means satar, means to hide and conceal something. So the shadow, wherever it's found, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, it is concealing, because the sun rises from the east and it sets in the west. So when it rises from the east, the shadow is towards the western side of the body or the object. And when it gets to the center of the sky and then descends towards the west, then the shadow is on the eastern side of the body or the object. The sun is descending the opposite way. So there's a moment where the shadow starts shrinking in the morning until it reaches almost nothing when the sun is in the center of the sky, and then it starts increasing again, but on the opposite side. So both sides, that shadow is called dhil in Arabic, because dhil comes from concealing, or dhil is in the meaning of concealing. But as for al-fay, fay linguistically means raja'a, al-ruju', to return. And that's why fay is only used for that shadow which occurs after zawal. The shadow which comes into existence after zawal, when the sun starts descending. Because the sun rises and then as if it returns down. Meaning its descent is like a returning down to the horizon. Because it comes from the horizon and it rises up, and then what you see is that it's descending, it's returning back to the horizon. So for this reason they would call that shadow which would occur in the second part of the day, the second half of the day, al-fay. Because the literal meaning of fay in Arabic is al-ruju'. The literal meaning of fay in Arabic is al-ruju'. Like this is the timing of dhuhr according to the Hanafi school of thought. We mentioned according to the Maliki and the Hanabila, and as well as the Shafi'i and the Hanafi school of thought. The timing of the ending of dhuhr, there is a khilaf in it. In the end, we say that according to the three, the Hanabila and the Shafi'iyya and the Malikiyya, one riwayah according to the Malikiyya, which is also mu'tamad, and the Shafi'iyya, which is the main riwayah of the Shafi'iyya, which Imam Nawawi did tasheeh of, and according to the riwayah of the Hanabila as well, at the end of mithl awwal, the timing of dhuhr finishes and asr starts, and that is also the opinion of Imam Abu Yusuf and Muhammad al-Hasan al-Shaybani from the Hanafiyya. It's also the opinion of Sahiban. And as for Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, he held the opinion that it continues, the timing of dhuhr continues until mithl thani, and at the ending of mithl thani, the timing of dhuhr finishes and the timing of asr starts. The timing of asr, we see the beginning timing of asr is, as we mentioned. And the timing of Asr, it will continue. So according to Abu Hanifa, it starts at Mithlain. According to Jumhur, it starts at Mithl Awwal, meaning one length. And it will continue until Ghurub al-Shams, until the sun sets. And this is the opinion of the Jumhur. Everyone, they all hold this opinion. They all hold this opinion. The Malikiyya, in one riwayah, in one of the riwayat of the Malikiyya, the opinion is that the last timing of Asr is ما لم تصفر الشمس. So before the sun sets, before the sun actually sets, slowly it starts losing its light. It starts losing its rays. And it starts getting lighter and lighter. The light and the brightness of the sun starts decreasing, to the point where the color of the sun almost changes. This is known as isfirar al-shams. And we can say right before the sun sets, around 10 minutes, 15 minutes, there is a time where we would say that the color of the sun has completely changed. And depending again on the clouds and the timing of the year and where it is situated and so on and so forth, that timing can fluctuate, can differ. But there's a timing before the sun sets where as if the color of the sun completely changes and it loses its brightness and you can tell it's about to set. This is known as isfirar al-shams. Isfirar al-shams. Sometimes, for example, when you see the sunset, it turns extremely orangish, as opposed to being yellow and bright and like golden and bright. It turns very almost orange right before it's about to set, and literally it becomes so, it loses its rays to the extent that you can actually stare at it and it doesn't hurt the eyes. This is called isfirar al-shams. Now again, this differs in the timing of the year and the place you are, and depending on the clouds and the fog and so on and so forth. All of that will influence when you see this, the sun becoming like this. But it does become like that before it sets. This timing, praying Asr at that timing, according to the one riwayah of the Malikiyya, is not permissible. Meaning the Asr timing continues until Isfirar al-Shams. As soon as Isfirar starts, even before Ghurub al-Shams, the timing of Asr finishes. But again, according to the Malikiyya, the other riwayah is that it continues until Ghurub, until the sun actually sets. And as for the Hanabila, they mention that there is waqtul ikhtiyar and waqtul darura. The waqtul ikhtiyar continues until isfirar. Now as for waqtul darura, the time for necessity, that is at the time of isfirar, meaning when the sun changes color. But waqtul ikhtiyar continues until isfirar. So they still allow it, meaning even after isfirar, it still counts as salatul asr. That is only a timing for necessity. Like for example, let's say someone was asleep and he woke up at that time. That time he prays asr and it will count. But otherwise he should be praying it before that time. Okay. The Shafi'iyya, they say that there's 7, we can take the timing of asr and divide it into 7 categories. So they say al-asr lahu sab'atu awqat. Timing of asr can be divided into 7 categories. Number 1 is waqtul fadila, the most virtuous timing, and that is the beginning, the immediate timing when asr starts. As soon as asr starts, that timing is waqtul fadila according to the Shafi'iyya. Number 2, according to the Shafi'iyya, is waqtul ikhtiyar, and that continues until mithlain. Until mithlain. Number 3 is waqtul udhr. And they say this is in the scenario for the one who wants to do jama'. He wants to do jama' between dhuhr and asr in the timing of asr, yani jama' ta'khir. So for him, dhuhr and asr together is performed in the timing of asr, and this is waqtul udhr. And number 4, according to them, is waqtul darura. Waqtul darura. That is also at the timing of, towards the end timing of asr, and that is the scenario where, for example, the ha'id, or for example, the sick individual becomes cured, or he becomes able to perform salah right towards the ending timing of asr. Or likewise, the woman who's experiencing her menses, she becomes pure right towards the ending of the timing of Salatul Asr. They say at that time, it becomes an obligation upon them as well. This is waqtul darura. And number 5 is waqtul jawaz bila karaha. Waqtul jawaz bila karaha. And that is the timing which is after mithlain. And then there's waqtul karaha, number 6, and that is isfirar al-shams. And the last one, which is waqtul hurma, that is right before the ending timing, the time finishes, right before the sunset. So little time is left that you're not actually able to perform the Dhuhr Asr. So maybe 1 minute left and then you start. Or for example, 1.5 minutes left and then you start until Ghurub al-Shams. So this is with regards to the ending timing of Salatul Asr, as we mentioned. And according to the Ahnaf as well, the timing of Isfirar shams, that is the timing where Asr is makruh as well. So according to all of the Imma, Isfirar shams, meaning that when the sun changes its color right before it's about to set, that is a timing where it's disliked to perform Asr Salah. And we also mentioned, according to all of them, if a person were to perform at that time, it will end up counting. It will still be valid, but it will be valid along with Karaha. And the actual ending timing of Asr is Ghurub al-Shams. Like, what is the beginning timing of Maghrib? Everyone agrees, there is ijma' that the beginning timing of Salatul Maghrib is Ghurub al-Shams, when the sun sets. When the sun sets. Like when we say when the sun sets, what does that mean? When it starts to set or when it finishes? When it completely sets. So they mentioned that the timing, what we intend by sunset is when it finishes, when it's completely non-visible. Meaning it goes down completely underneath the horizon and you can no longer see it. So you will not say that the timing of Asr exited by simply some of the sun setting. Rather, when the entire sun sets, that's when the timing of Asr finishes, and that is when the timing of Maghrib starts. This was mentioned in Nihayatul Muhtaj, Sharhul Minhaj. And you can look it up in the Hanafi works too, if they have any detail regarding this. And as for Salatul Fajr, they say the timing of Salatul Fajr is the opposite. As soon as some of the sun rises, the timing of Fajr finishes. As soon as some of the sun rises, the timing of Fajr finishes. And this is based on an asl, according to them, which is we will consider as soon as some of the sun rises, the timing of Fajr finishes. This is according to an asl, which is رؤية البعض تنزل منزلة رؤية الجميع. As long as you can see some of the sun, it's as if the entire sun is up. So in Fajr, the timing finishes with the sunrise. So as long as you see some of the sun, it's as if the entire sun is up, and therefore the timing of Fajr finishes. But in Maghrib, the timing starts with the sun set, and Asr finishes with the sun setting. So as long as some of it's up, it's as if the entire thing is up. So for the actual sunset to occur, the entire sun has to disappear. طيب. So in the beginning and timing of Maghrib, everyone agrees. What is the end timing of Salatul Maghrib? In this, there is khilaf. The Ahnaf, and along with the Hanabila, they say that the end timing of Salatul Maghrib is Ghurub al-Shafaq. Ghurub al-Shafaq. And we're going to explain exactly what al-Shafaq means in a bit. And this is also one opinion from the two opinions of the Shafi'iyya. And it's one opinion from the two opinions of the Malikiyya. According to the Shafi'iyya, in Al-Madhab Al-Qadim, this opinion was held, which is that timing of Maghrib remains all the way till Ghurub al-Shafaq. When we say Shafaq, what are we referring to? So after the sun sets, so immediately after the sun will go beyond the horizon, you will actually see light outside. So just because the sun completely set and descended beneath the horizon doesn't mean immediately it turns black. Like it's not like turning off the switch. When you turn off the switch, immediately the room goes black. That's not the case with the sun. The sun has rays, okay, and the light extends beyond it. So even if it goes beneath the horizon, there is still a lot of light that you will see outside. And likewise at sunrise, when the sun is about to rise, before the sun actually rises, you will see brightness outside. And then it'll just become more and more bright. Likewise in sunset, even after the sun completely sets. So in reality, if you pray Maghrib right in the beginning timing of Maghrib, you will actually see brightness outside. Maghrib is performed right in the beginning time of Maghrib, you will actually see brightness outside. Like regarding the timing of Maghrib though, so after the sun sets, there is still a little bit of brightness outside. And slowly that brightness turns into darkness. But it doesn't become immediately dark. So slowly that brightness turns into darkness. And then there is still a little bit of redness that you see in the horizon. This is known as Ash-Shafaq al-Ahmar. Because the sun just set, and maybe give it 1 hour after the sun setting, there is still a degree of redness that you will see in the horizon. And then that redness after some time will also disappear. And all that will be left is a degree, a little bit of brightness or whiteness. This is known as Shafaq al-Abyad. So the redness which is in the sky, after the sun will set, after maybe 1 hour or 1.5 hour possibly, depending on the time of the year, after the sun sets, that is known as Ash-Shafaq al-Ahmar. And after the redness disappears, there's a little bit of whiteness that's left as well on the horizon, and that is known as Ash-Shafaq al-Abyad. According to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, Isha time starts after the second shafaq, which is ash-shafaq al-abyad, disappears. So it becomes completely dark. That is when Isha timing starts, and that is when Maghrib timing finishes. And according to the majority, meaning the rest of the ones that hold the opinion that Maghrib time continues until ash-shafaq, ghurub al-shafaq, they say what's intended by shafaq is ash-shafaq al-ahmar. So as soon as the redness finishes and the whiteness enters, that is when Maghrib time finishes and Isha timing starts. Now the difference maybe will be depending on the time of the year. Possibly it can be maybe 30 minutes. Sometimes it can be even longer than that. And again, depending on where the person or where the area is, the location of the actual city, or where the person is situated. Sometimes that can be longer and sometimes that can be shorter. This is the idea behind it. طيب. According to one opinion, this is the madhab qadim of the Shafi'iyya, the timing continues all the way till ghurub al-shafaq al-ahmar, until the redness finishes on the horizon. According to the madhab jadid though of the Shafi'iyya, the timing of Maghrib is finished, they say, بمضي قدر زمن وضوء وغسل أو تيمم وستر عورة وأذان وإقامة وخمس ركعات. The timing of Maghrib is extremely short. And what is it? Enough time for you to make wudu, meaning attain tahara. And after that, enough time for you to cover your awrah, meaning wear clothing. Timing for adhan, iqama, and khams rak'at, 5 rak'at. 2 rak'at which are sunnah before, or the 3 rak'at which are fard of Maghrib, and the 2 rak'at which are after Maghrib. And some added the 2 rak'at which are before Maghrib. Some added, in fact, some of the books of Shafi'i don't even mention the 2 rak'at before Maghrib. They say 5. What's intended is the 3 for Maghrib and the 2 rak'at sunnah which are performed after Maghrib. And some added on top of that 2 rak'at which are before Maghrib, which is because Shafi'i also consider 2 rak'at before Maghrib to be mustahab. So according to the Shafi'iyya, the Maghrib time is extremely limited. It's not something which is prolonged. This is the madhab jadid of the Shafi'iyya. Like Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala did not give tarjih to this opinion. Okay. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he gives tarjih to the other opinion, which is madhab qadim. And this is very interesting. Seldomly do you find some of the later scholars from the Shafi'iyya, and as I mentioned just moments ago, that according to Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, after compiling al-madhab al-jadid, which was the one compiled in Egypt, he said, I don't permit for anyone to transmit my opinions from al-madhab al-qadim. You can only transmit the opinions of al-madhab al-jadid. But rarely, some occasions you will find some of the later Shafi'i scholars giving tarjih to the madhab qadim over al-madhab al-jadid. And Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala specifically does that when there is a sarih, explicit narration that goes against al-madhab al-jadid and it's in line with al-madhab al-qadim. Like Imam Shafi'i most likely knew the narration. He would have left it for another reason. But Imam Nawawi rahimahullah at sometimes he will still give tarjih to al-madhab al-qadim over al-madhab al-jadid. These masail should be gathered for the Shafi'i students. Gather these masail where Imam Nawawi gave tarjih to al-madhab al-qadim over al-madhab al-jadid based on the explicitness of certain riwayat. This is one example. Why? Because the statement which is in Sahih Muslim of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَقْتُ الْمَغْرِبِ مَا لَمْ يَغِبِ الشَّفَقِ. This is extremely explicit. Timing of Maghrib remains until the shafaq, which is the, as we mentioned, either the redness or the whiteness, ala khilaf, disappears. So since the Messenger said this sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's difficult to hold the other opinion, which is that the only amount of time that you can pray Maghrib is literally 5 rak'at. The amount of 5 rak'at. Likewise, according to the Malikiyya, the one riwayah according to the Malikiyya is that Maghrib time also remains only for the amount of time where you can pray 5 rak'at. That's it. The same as the Shafi'iyya. Okay, so this is why, especially in Masajid, this should be taken into consideration that since this is an opinion held by 2 madhahib, which is a very strong opinion, Maghrib shouldn't be delayed too much. Okay, because even the Shafi'iyya that permit the praying the 2 rak'at which are mustahab before Salatul Maghrib, they say in the end you only need enough time that you can pray those 2 rak'at, and then you pray another 3 and then another 2, and that's it. That's the timing of Maghrib is finished. You can't pray it after that. Okay, so delaying Maghrib, for example, after the adhan by 10 minutes, sometimes in the haram they do this. They'll give adhan, for example, Salatul Maghrib, adhan will happen and delay Maghrib for like a nice 7, 8, 9 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes. Okay, that is, yes, according to the Hanabila, for example, that will be considered fine because the Hanabila say that Maghrib time remains until Shafaq. But because there are 2 major schools of thought that have very strong opinions, that are saying that the Maghrib time is very limited, it's better to remain on the cautious side and limit and make Maghrib quickly right after Ghurub al-Shams. Unless, of course, for example, sometimes there's iftar that happens on Mondays and Thursdays. For example, in the Haram, they used to have iftar. And it would be difficult, for example, to actually wrap everything up so quickly. So sometimes, yes, to delay it and take the opinion, for example, of the Hanabil or the Hanafiya, which they say that Maghrib remains until Ghiyab al-Shafaq, that is fine. But otherwise, it's better to remain on the cautious side in this regard. As for the timing of Isha, everyone agrees that the beginning timing of Isha is Maghrib al-Shafaq, the disappearing of al-Shafaq. And we mentioned, according to Abu Hanifa, he intends by Shafaq al-Shafaq al-Abyad, which will mean that Isha timing is a bit delayed. And according to Imam Shafi'i, he intends by that al-Shafaq al-Ahmar, which means that it would be a bit or slightly early. Now, since we're mentioning al-Shafaq, we might as well mention this too. Which one of us actually go outside right now, every single time, every single day, when, for example, to determine whether Isha time started or not, and look at the horizon and see if there's still light? In fact, it's impossible in cities to do that right now because of light pollution. You went outside in a city, then you wouldn't be able to actually see the horizon and see whether, you wouldn't be able to see Shafaq al-Ahmar and not Abyad either, because all you see is the light around you, the light pollution in the city. So really the only way to actually determine when is al-Shafaq al-Abyad or al-Shafaq al-Ahmar disappearing, you'd have to go outside, far, far in the distance, and determine it over there. This is where the concept of the degrees come into play. Whether it's, for example, 12, 13, or whether it's 15, or whether it's 18. Meaning, how many degrees does the sun need to set beneath the horizon when we can say at this time, the Shafaq Ahmar or the Shafaq Abyad is disappearing? And over here, again, how would you determine this? How would someone be able to determine this? Because in reality, guys, if you think about it, the idea of the light which is on the horizon, doing the finishing and completely the Shafaq Ahmar or the Shafaq Abyad finishing, that is heavily dependent upon the fog and the amount of clouds and so many other things as well. It's not only every single day that timing can actually change. It's not only dependent on the place, but also dependent on the weather. So at times, for example, it might be extremely foggy, like for example today and yesterday it was extremely foggy outside. If someone went today, for example, if let's say there was no light pollution and you actually seen the Shafaq, 100% the Shafaq al-Ahmar would be disappearing far earlier than it would normally be disappearing. Likewise with al-Shafaq al-Abyad. Because this is based on what you see. And likewise when it comes to al-Shafaq, al-Abyad, same idea. So what ends up happening is that scholars, to make it easy and understandable, especially today, we're not going to say every single time you got to pray Fajr, go travel 2 hours out into the north where there's nothing, literally in the middle of nowhere, and then go see so you can figure out when Isha time starts. Okay, there were some people that went out to the north and stayed there for a month and determined the timings of when the Shafaq Ahmar, for example, would disappear, when the Shafaq Abyad would disappear. But they noticed that it fluctuated. This is the truth. That it fluctuates a lot. And that makes sense because based on the weather conditions, it would necessarily have to fluctuate. It would be impossible that every single day the exact moment is when the horizon is completely emptying out. And Islam, the question is now, in Islam, why was the hukum attached to this? The simple reason. One of the beauties of al-fiqh al-Islami, one of the muwayyizat of al-fiqh al-Islami is that it is something that can be acted upon anywhere and at any time. It wasn't specifically designed for a group of people in a specific area. And the timings of Salah, and likewise the beginning time of Ramadan, Islam has made it dependent upon something that you can calculate anywhere and anytime. So for example, if the Messenger of Allah were to make the timings of Salah, for example, dependent on very, very precise calculations, then we would say that would be difficult for a majority of the Ummah throughout history. Because not everyone today, maybe someone can precisely calculate based on something, based on the tools that we have today, exactly when the timings change and so on and so forth. Or when exactly the sun, for example, how beneath the horizon should it be in order for this effect to occur. But in the time of the Messenger ﷺ, and the majority of the history of Islam until today, this is not something which was realistic. Likewise with the beginning of Ramadan. Even if today, for example, someone can claim that, okay, based on calculations, we can determine exactly when Ramadan starts. Like, what about the rest of history? What about 1400 years in the past? So if the Messenger had commanded that the timing of Ramadan should start based on the calculations of when the moon is born and so on and so forth, this would actually be taklif ma la yutaq. This would be haraj shadid. This would be obliging people to do something that is not in their ability to do. And they're not able to do it. So Islam said, forget about that. Look, if you see it, fast. If you don't see it, don't fast. Simple as that. Make it easy, make it simple, make it something that can be acted upon throughout history at all moments in time. And this was the hikmah of removing the hukum from the Subki mentions this explicitly. He says the hukum, for example, the beginning of the month of Ramadan, Shara' deliberately did not make the beginning of the month of Ramadan dependent on when the moon is actually mawjood or not. It made it dependent on when you see, if you see it or not. That's why the wording in the hadith is very interesting. The Messenger says, fast when you see it. فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ. If clouds are covering it, أَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ 30 يَوْمًا. The Messenger didn't say if it's not there. He said if clouds are covering it. Meaning even if it's there but you can't see it because clouds are covering, just finish the days of Sha'ban. Don't make it complicated. And if you see it, fast. If you don't see it, it's fine. Don't fast. To make it easy and to make it something that can be acted upon throughout all of history. So this was actually deliberately Shara' changed the hukum and did not make it dependent upon the presence of the moon, and rather made it dependent upon whether you see it or not. So if you go backwards and say, okay, now today we have calculations, so why can't we make it depend on the moon? Then you're saying you're bringing back the haraj that Sharia deliberately removed. You're bringing back the haraj and the difficulty that Sharia went out of its way to remove. Because Shara' from the very beginning could have made it dependent upon the actual presence of the moon or not. But it deliberately did not do that, to make it easier and something that can be acted upon in all moments in time. So this would be actually bringing back the difficulty that the Sharia is trying to remove. واضح؟ نعم. So the beginning timing of Isha, according to everyone, is Maghrib al-Shafaq. The ending timing of Isha, some said that it is 1/3 of the night. And that has also been transmitted from the Maliki school of thought. In fact, Al-Baji says, هو المشهور عند المالكية. And it's also one riwayah from the Shafi'iyya that it's 1/3 of the night. Meaning the ending timing of Isha is 1/3 of the night. And the other opinion is that it's half of the night. And this is also transmitted from both the Maliki and the Shafi'iyya. And the last opinion is that it is until طلوع الفجر, until the timing of Fajr starts. And this is the opinion that the Hanafiya are upon, and this is the mu'tamad of the Shafi'iyya. So the Shafi'iyya actually have three riwayat in their madhab. One is ثلث الليل, one is نصف الليل, and one is طلوع الفجر. طلوع الفجر is the mu'tamad of the Shafi'iyya. And this is the opinion of the Maliki, which is غير المشهور. المشهور عند المالكية هو ثلث الليل الأول, and غير المشهور is طلوع الفجر. نعم. And this is also the opinion of the Hanabila. This is the ending timing of Salatul Isha. But everyone agrees that delaying Isha till beyond half of the night, towards the second half of the night, is disliked. Delaying Isha till beyond half of the night is something which is disliked. Like, what is the timing for Salatul Fajr? So there's ijma' that the beginning timing of Salatul Fajr is طلوع الفجر الثاني. طيب. So you know the effect we mentioned for after the sun sets, which is that initially there will be a redness, and then that redness will fade away, and then there will be whiteness. Okay. When the sun is rising, what do you think is going to happen? The opposite effect. Initially there will be whiteness that will come, and then after that, that whiteness will disappear, and then redness will come. Okay. So the timing of Fajr starts when the redness appears. This is known as Al-Fajr al-Thani, and it's called Al-Fajr al-Sadiq. And the first one is called Al-Fajr al-Kadhib. Why? Because there's whiteness that comes and it's vertical in the sky, and then it disappears. It goes back to black darkness. So they call this Al-Fajr al-Kadhib. And then there is, as the sun is about to rise, there is redness that spreads along the horizon. That is Al-Fajr al-Thani, which is Al-Fajr al-Sadiq. And that is the timing when Salatul Fajr starts according to Ijma'. According to Ijma'. طيب. The ending timing of Salatul Fajr is, now again, before the sun will rise, you're going to have the same effect, opposite. What you have in sunset, you have the opposite effect in the morning, which is that before the sun rises, even before the sun actually comes above the horizon, you're going to see brightness that will spread around. Just like after the sun sets completely, underneath the horizon, there's still brightness outside. Likewise, before the sun actually rises, there's brightness that you will see around in the horizon. Okay? This is known as Waqtu al-Isfar. Al-Isfar, which is the brightness, the yellowness that comes into the sky even before the sun actually starts rising. The timing of Fajr, according to the majority, continues until the sun actually rises. So Waqtul Isfar is still from the timing of Fajr. Waqtul Isfar is still from the timing of Fajr. However, Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, in one of his opinions, one of the opinions that is transmitted from him, he mentions that the waqt ikhtiyari of Fajr is until Isfar. And after isfar, meaning after the brightness comes, until the sun actually rises, that is waqtul darura, the ashab al-a'dhar. Only for the people with udhr. So the ha'id, for example, that becomes purified, or the one who's sleeping, he wakes up at that time, or the one who's sick, for example, let's say he becomes cured from his sickness, he will pray at that time. And according to the second opinion of Imam Malik, all of it is correct. Well, Imam Malik has two opinions in this regard. One is that waqtul ikhtiyari is only until isfar, and isfar is waqtul darura. The second opinion is that the entire timing is waqtul ikhtiyar. And the Shafi'iyya as well, they say that Fajr timing actually can be divided into four categories. Waqtul Fadila, which is the first one, and then Waqtul Ikhtiyar, which continues until Isfar, and then Waqtul Jawaz Bila Karaha, which is until it becomes very red, extremely bright. And Karaha is after Al Humra, when it becomes extremely bright. When it becomes extremely bright. Naam. And according to the Hanabila, it's the same as the first opinion of the Malikiyya, which is that the Waqtul Ikhtiyar is until Isfar, and after Isfar is Waqtul Darura. The same thing that they mentioned regarding Al-Asr. So these are the different timings according to the different A'imma and the different opinions when it comes to the timings of the Salawat. Now we'll read the Hadith, Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, or Imam Muhammad Hassan al-Shaybani, he says, أخبرنا Malik, Imam Malik informs us, عن يزيد بن زياد مولا لبني هاشم. It's really interesting, we're going to have a discussion regarding this. From Yazid ibn Ziyad, who is the Mawla of Banu Hashim, and Abdullah ibn Rafi' Mawla Salama zawj al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He narrates from Abdullah ibn Rafi', who is the Mawla of Salama, radiyallahu ta'ala anha, who is the wife of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Yani Abdullah ibn Rafi' was the freed slave of Salama, who is from Ummahatul Mu'mineen. And Abdullah ibn Rafi' narrates from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, أنه سأله عن وقت الصلاة. يعني Abdullah ibn Rafi' asked Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu regarding the timings of Salah. فقال أبو هريرة أنا أخبرك, I will inform you. صل الظهر إذا كان ظلك مثلك. Pray ظهر when your shadow is equal length to you. والعصر إذا كان ظلك مثلك. And pray عصر when your shadow becomes double your length. والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس. When the sun sets, pray maghrib. والعشاء ما بينك وبين ثلث الليل. And Isha, pray from the night until 1/3 of the night. فإن نمت إلى نصف الليل فلا نامت عينك وصل الصبح بغلس. And if you were to sleep until half of the night, فلا نامت عينك, يعني just continue sleeping. Meaning you should not have slept until half the night, you should have prayed Isha on its time. وصل الصبح بغلس. And pray صبح بغلس. غلس means the initial moment, right in the beginning when the timing is still very dark, when it's very extremely dark outside, as soon as طلوع الفجر, right when Fajr time starts. This is the actual wording of the hadith. Now there's a lot of discussion inshallah that we're going to have regarding this narration. We'll leave that till tomorrow, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. A lot of interesting things. We'll continue bi-idhnillahi ta'ala tomorrow.